Hello everyone. Tonight, I will be reading two new creepy posts that I found on the Creepy Encounters subreddit. So sit back and relax, because tonight, we'll be diving headfirst into these two strange stories.
These other stories.
On November 23rd, 2020, at 6:19 p.m., a Redditor would post their creepy story on the Creepy Encounters subreddit. Their post is as follows. This is the story of a coworker I had a long time ago, so I can look back on it now and laugh, but at the time it was really distressing for me. To give some context, every summer I would do some temp work for the company where my dad worked. It was an education company, so they always needed temp workers around July, August, time for all the exam remarks that they had come in. It was data entry work, but it suited me fine and it meant I could earn a little extra cash while I was at university. I did this every summer from when I was 19 through to when I was 23, and then I got another job at the same company for a bit after I graduated, but we'll get to that later. For now, all you need to know is that I was a reasonably familiar face there, and everyone knew I was my dad's daughter. The main downside of working there was that I'd clock off at around 5 p.m. and I'd wait for my dad to finish work, since he was the head of the entire apartment, so he ended up staying a bit later. Every day I'd bring a book with me and sit in this little foyer area between his department and the department where I worked, since it had the most comfortable chairs. I must have been 22 years old when this happened because it was the penultimate summer that I had worked there. I had just had my hair cut short for the first time in my life, and I had it dyed red as well. I was sitting on these couches reading when all of a sudden this guy approaches me. Let's call him Leon. He tells me that he works in my dad's apartment and he thought he'd come introduce himself. This was a pretty common occurrence for me, and I was aware of this guy. He was young and decent looking, so a few of the women in my department had a crush on him. I was dating someone at the time though, and I'd never actually seen him in person, but I could see what they saw in him. We got to chatting and he mentioned that I changed my hair, so I told him about cutting it short and he cut me off mid-sentence. This is where it started to get weird. He said, no, first it was brown and you didn't have a fringe. Then you went through at that phase of curling it. Then you put the fringe in it and dyed it red. After that you dyed it purple. Now you've had it cut short and dyed it back to red. This guy I had met was just describing over 2 years worth of hairstyle changes that I had. I felt pretty creeped out, but he seemed like a nice enough guy, and I guess I worked at the company throughout the entire time, so it was reasonable to assume that he noticed me before. That should have been their first red flag. He asked me if I had Facebook, and I told him that I did, so he said he would add me. That seemed pretty normal, but then, after he'd send the friend request, he asked me to get my phone out so he could watch me accept the friend request. I find myself impossible to be impolite, so I got my phone out and showed him that I accepted it. I thought that might calm him down. Bear in mind, he wasn't a bad looking guy, so I felt a bit flattered at this point that he was so keen on me. That sense of flattery dissolved really fast. After the Facebook thing, he kept asking me if I had MSN, and I told him that I didn't. I swear, throughout this conversation, he asked me if I had MSN about 4 times. Then, the final time he asked, he was like, please, can you get MSN so we can chat after work? It was like he had something really urgent he wanted to tell me, but I had only just met this person. I kind of laughed and said about how I hadn't used MSN since I was a teenager, without necessarily rejecting him. Then he said something like, well, if you don't have MSN, then do you have Skype? This seemed like the perfect opportunity to bring up my boyfriend, who was a foreign student and went back to his home country during the summer. He was the only person I spoke to on Skype. I said to Leon about how I didn't have my own Skype account, but I used my dad's Skype account to talk to my boyfriend. I really thought this might ward him off. I was wrong. Without missing a beat, he said, can you please go get your own Skype account so we can video chat after work? He said it like I was somehow inconveniencing him, like this was something we'd agreed to do months ago or something. I had no idea how to react, so I just sort of smiled and laughed. Thank the heavens. Someone from my dad's department walked past at that moment and was like, Leon, aren't you meant to be at your desk? He scurried off pretty quick after that, but not before reminding me to get my own Skype account and send him the details. I told my dad about the whole exchange in the car ride home, but all he said was that Leon was very friendly and that a lot of women in his department liked him, so maybe I just misunderstood the situation. I thought he was probably right, so I tried not to let it bother me. Later that evening, however, I was on my computer doing university work when a message popped up on my Facebook. It was Leon. All the message said was, we like the same movies. I don't know what it was, but something about this message really freaked me out, so I decided not to respond and logged off of Facebook. hoping that he wouldn't notice I had been online. The next day after work, I was sat in my usual spot when Leon comes over to me. His face was like thunder. At first, I thought he was just having a bad day and was walking through the hallway, but my heart dropped when I realized he was walking directly towards me. "Why didn't you respond to my Facebook message?" I was stunned. How was I supposed to respond to that? Who says stuff like that in real life? Lucky for me, I didn't have an opportunity to respond because he started off on this tirade. I'm not even kidding. He started listing all the movies we had in common that he had seen on my Facebook profile. Batman the Dark Knight, Watchmen, Scout Pilgrim vs. the World, Fight Club. I just sat there watching him reel off all these film titles. Once he was finished, all he said was, "It's okay, I forgive you," and then walked off back to his department. Over the next couple of weeks, he came in and found me in my spot every day and talked at me from the moment I sat down to the moment my dad came to me. I don't remember any of the other exchanges, but I do remember distinctly one day pretending to pick my nose when I saw him coming to see if it would put him off. It didn't. It got to the point to where I would get so stressed out after work that I'd go and hide in the toilets for as long as I could, but the women I worked with started to notice and I think I was weird. Eventually, I broached the subject with my dad and he gave me his car keys after my shift so that I could go hide out in his car rather than the building. So I'm camped out in his car and I'm still feeling quite tense, but after about 20 minutes, I start to feel at ease. Surely he won't come back looking for me, right? Wrong. I look over at the main entrance and my heart drops. He's coming out of the door and he's scrutinizing all over the cars. I sink down as far as possible into my seat, but I wasn't fast enough and he saw me. He comes rushing off and starts tapping on the glass, so I open the door and ask him what's up. "I didn't see you in your usual spot, but luckily, name a doorman, told me he saw you come out here. Why are you in your dad's car?" Again, what are you supposed to say to that? I told him I had a headache, so I'd come out to the car to take some paracetamol and see if I could get some sleep. At least he respected that because he told me to feel better and then left me alone. I breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that I was only going to be working there for a few more days before I had to go back to university. I told my dad about the car incident and he gave Leon a talking to the next day. Leon would still come find me in the foyer, but he'd only talk to me for a few minutes in passing before leaving me alone. It was a big relief. On my last day of work there, I was fully expecting him to do something crazy, but he didn't even come to chat me with that day. I left the office and I thought I would never see him again. I found out he was fired not long after I left the company that year because he kept coming into work late and then spent most of his time at work chatting with his coworkers, and me apparently. Fast forward to January 2014, I was preparing to move to China for a position teaching English. I had graduated from university and I was working at the same company, but this time in a semi-permanent capacity. It was my last day at work, so I received quite a few gifts and some fuss from my coworkers. It was about 10 a.m. when who should I see walk through the door but Leon. He had been hired as a temp to do the job that I'd done for so many years. As soon as he walked through the door, he saw me and his flash of recognition crossed his face. I wanted to slide under my desk and die. He came walking over to me, it was all smiles, asking about how I was and what I was still doing at the company. It was at this point that one of my coworkers mentioned about how I was off to China soon. Leon seized on that and started talking about how his friend, who was also interested in TEFL. His interest seemed genuine, so I got to talking about how I got my TEFL qualification, who I got it through, what company I was going to be working for out in China, etc. We chatted for about 20 minutes, and he wrote down some details for his friend, then went off to work. At the end of the day, I was packing all my stuff to leave, and a few of my coworkers were coming over to say their goodbyes. Don't get me wrong, the Leon incident aside, I had a wonderful time working at the company, and I made a lot of great friends. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Leon approaching, but I think, what's the harm? He says goodbye and wishes me luck on my new venture. Then, as I'm literally walking out the door of the department, I hear him call out, "See you in China." For the first 2 weeks of my teacher training over there, I was like a hawk, keeping a constant lookout for this guy. He never did follow me out to China, but it still reminds me of the creepiest encounters of my life. On February 14th, 2020, at 11:20 a.m., a Redditor would share their terrifying experience. Their post is as follows. I got off work and went to my mom's to help her, and my dad set up a new Alexa TV they just got. It ended up taking a while because we had to run to the store to grab an adapter, so I didn't leave their house until about 8 p.m. And by the time I got home, I recently moved a few weeks ago and live alone. It was close to 9 p.m. and pitch black. I had my hands full of things that I forgot at my parents since I stayed with them for a month before I found my place. Anyway, I was walking up to the sidewalk to my apartment when I hear him calling out to me. Him. Hey, excuse me? Hello, hey. He was politely persistent. I had one headphone in listening to YouTube stories, and I'm trying to pretend like I don't hear him. Not to be rude, but because it's pitch black outside and I've been up since 6 a.m. and I'm dead tired. I don't like small talk and I'm bad at it. Eventually, I turn around and we introduce ourselves. Immediately, the hairs on my arms prickle and I get this feeling in my gut. This guy is sizing me up. He wants to know where I live to see if he can break into my place, rob me, etc. It's just something I know. It's not even a feeling, but a fact. The entire time we're talking, maybe 10 minutes, he has his hands in his pockets, his head up, and keeps looking around like he's suspecting to see someone. Granted, it's cold, but we live in Arizona, so it's not that cold. But this also puts me on edge. Then he begins asking about me, how long ago I moved in, which unit I'm in, etc. He's obviously going to see which unit I'm in when I walk into it, so I just tell him. He makes small talk for a few minutes and then asks me if it's just me. I explain, oh no, I've got my 2 dogs. I go on to say how big they are, how protective they are, and how they are roaming freely in my apartment while I'm at work, which is all true. He asks if I take them on walks and how often. I hear, how often do you leave your apartment empty? I explain that I have to be careful because, while my dogs love me and act like big babies with me, they're very protective, so going out is a challenge because I have to be careful of people coming up to us and how my dogs react to them. I turn the conversation around and ask which unit he's in, how long he's been here, who he lives with, etc. He seems uncomfortable and gives me vague answers, waving his hand behind him and saying, oh, that one. He seems uncomfortable about me trying to clarify which apartment he's in, so he tapers off the conversation and we say our goodbyes. I unlock my door, give my dogs a command to bark, which they do, and it's loud and vicious sounding. I immediately give them love and call my mom, give her his name, what he looks like, his vague portrayal of what apartment he's in, a reminder of our panic phrase, so if I have to say it, she knows to calmly end the call and send the police. Now I'm just sitting in my apartment freaking out at every little sound with my dogs piled on top of me, typing this out. I'm gonna call the non-emergency police and ask them to do a drive-by to make me feel safer. Update. I'm sitting on my couch replying to comments. It's 9:30 p.m. on a Friday night and I'm hearing the softest knocking. If I weren't 3 feet from the door, I wouldn't have heard it. I have both my dogs out, my pit barked, and everything is all locked up tight. Obviously I didn't answer, but I don't have a peephole, so I have no idea who it was. Am I overreacting? Update 2. I just got home and noticed a light on in my car. The windows are up and the passenger side is locked and you can only open the driver's side a certain way, so I don't see anyone opening it, and his number is in my window on the outside with a message saying text me. On the back of the paper is information about a court date and such. I'm going to call non-emergency police and add it to my report, and I've updated everyone keeping an eye on me. So yeah, I'm still freaked out. So, that's it guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and let me know what you thought of these stories in the comments below. Did you think they're real or fake? As always guys,
Have a nice day.